What do you do when you're watching someone on your team make mistakes in real time in front of a room full of people? One leader thought she knew the answer. She was wrong. Stay tuned for another great episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and this is Bad Boss Confessional, where real leaders get honest about the mistakes that made them better. Before we dive in, a quick thank you to our sponsors for making this show possible. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. My guest today works with Titus Talent Strategies, helping organizations build stronger teams and healthier cultures. She brings a people first lens to everything she does, from leadership development to the systems that help companies grow with intention. She's especially passionate about the human side of growth, where trust, communication, and real conversations make all the difference. Welcome to Bad Boss Confessional, Raina Fryer.
Thanks for having me, Beth.
It's so great to see you, Raina. We both just got back from the EOS conference.
We did, and I apologize for the voice you're hearing. I've been drinking hot tea all day long in preparation, but it's just in 2.5 days of talking, it's bound to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I got like the most massive headache, and then I think I was putting off like a cold or something for the entire time, and then as soon as it was over, I was like, ugh. So anyway, we're
That
both.
adrenaline can only take you so far, Beth. That's the issue.
I know, but isn't adrenaline great? I'm
It
telling you.
is. It is.
Anyway, so I love Titus Talent, as you know. They've done such a great job for my clients, and we've had Jonathan on the podcast before. But I don't know that much about you, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and your career and everything that led up to this moment. Well, maybe not everything, but maybe a brief
It's
2-minute
a
history.
long story, Beth. That's a long story. Well, it doesn't surprise me that you don't know as much about me as you do about some of other team members because primarily when I came to Titus, I was very behind the scenes and running our internal people operations. So primarily I was focused on internal development of our team members. And only just recently did I start managing more external facing partners and applying the strategy that I've used at many of my organizations to organizations out there who are using us for other services. I did start my career in training and development and came in backwards, I guess more backwards than a lot of people, to the human resources space. So the first 12 years of my career, I spent in training and facilitation, training crisis management programs all around the US and other parts of the world. And after that, I decided that I should get a little bit more well rounded. So I moved from professional services into manufacturing, where I spent a few years working with a pasteurization organization, just applying some of the same principles to a different environment. From there, I took a big leap and went into a law firm where I was an executive vice president of administration. And that's actually when I was introduced to Titus Talent Strategies. I was a candidate that was placed at the law firm. We stayed very well connected as we introduced other services that Titus had to offer. And then over time, I just stayed connected with Titus. And then years later, here I am.
Wow, that's a varied background.
I figured it's good to have lots of little pieces so that I can now be more global in my approach to talent strategy with our partners because we are industry agnostic. So it's been really helpful.
And your role specifically at Titus Talent is what? Like,
I'm head of
just
talent strategy. So internally, I lead all things people and culture. And then externally, I lead the executive search division and apply my hands as a culture and talent strategist for our partners because so many of our partners are small and don't have strategic HR. So I act as an HR advisor, mostly as
mm.
expert voice rather than expert pair of hands.
Right, so when somebody calls you and says, "Do we need a controller, a director of finance, or a CFO?" You can answer that question for
I
them.
can't answer that question, but mostly because they answer it for themselves. So we get really curious when partners are coming to us because oftentimes they really don't know what they need, and it's our job to help them figure that out.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. All right, Raina. Well, you're not getting out of here without telling
Oh
us your
boy.
confession. So let's just get it over with.
Sounds good. So it was interesting when Beth and I were just in preparation for this conversation. And I said, I did not have to think very hard about my bad boss moment because I feel like it was a really pivotal moment in my career in terms of leading and managing people. I probably It's interesting. I probably remember the room more than the moment itself. It was like the hum of the side conversations, the flip charts were half filled. It was a quiet weight of being, I guess, what you would call the expert in the room. But maybe I wasn't quite feeling like one yet, which is what led to my bad boss behavior. I was a young professional. The majority of people that I trained at that point in my career had sometimes 20 or 30 years on me. So, in this particular instance, I was facilitating a session alongside a trainer who was a newer facilitator on my team. And I feel like they were very talented. They were creative, they were confident, they were willing to stretch the material in ways that I hadn't. And maybe too much, I thought at the time. And so after the session, I pulled them aside and addressed the content changes privately. I think I was measured and calm, and that part I still stand by. But during the session, it was different. And it was more that whenever they mishandled some physical components that were part of our crisis management training, I feel like these were parts where safety actually mattered. I stepped in immediately. I corrected them. I would redirect them. Sometimes I'm sure it was done mid sentence. And at the time, I justified it. People could get hurt, and that part was true. But I think if I'm honest with myself, that was not the whole truth. Part of it was likely ego. I love when ego comes into the picture. As I said, I was young in my expertise compared to others who had come before me. And so standing in that room, maybe there was a little bit of that feeling of needing to prove that I belonged there. And every correction was that way of saying, I know what I'm doing. I don't know. I played volleyball collegiately as well, Beth, and it reminds me of volleyball a little bit. Being young in your managerial career, when you're new to volleyball, you just want to crush the ball. You want to hit it as hard as you can. It feels powerful. It looks impressive. It gets the crowd really going. And oftentimes it scores for you, but it's not strategic. It's not consistent. And it's like the players who actually win the points, they're the ones that are placing the ball. They see the gaps, they tip instead of slam, they understand the timing, not just the force. And I just didn't have that yet as a leader. And looking back on that, I feel like it was also the way that I was trained as a facilitator, really direct feedback, over the top, sometimes an hour of feedback after a session. And I didn't really enjoy that, but it was all I knew. It was my first time leading and managing people. So, what I thought were necessary in the moment corrections landed differently for my teammate. They were public, they were sharp, they probably felt, I don't know, undermining. And in my mind, I'm scoring some points because I'm maintaining control and I'm ensuring safety, but I was losing something really important. And that thing was trust. And so the moment I knew that it was the trust, we had team changes, and we had team changes once a year to expose people to other managers and other areas of expertise. And that person asked for a new manager. And that really stuck with me, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. It was final. And I think it was a reflection of those dozens of small moments where I chose power over placement. So it sticks with me to this day. As I said, I didn't have to think very hard about that moment because it was a big one for me in my career.
So, how long until after this event happened till that person asked for a new manager?
It was probably about 2 or 3 months. It was pretty close to the event itself.
And did you realize right away that there was a misstep, or did you only figure it out after they asked for a new manager?
I think I knew after the training itself that I could have handled things better or differently. We had a good debriefing conversation, and there's a few points where she had stated, I wish you would have pulled me aside. I wish you could have corrected me differently. And I felt it in that moment. I just didn't know how to correct what I already started in that moment.
Yeah, this is such a tough spot for young managers to be in. And honestly, I think this is why I'm so passionate about Great Boss Workshops, because they're primarily we are targeting young managers or managers that have never had any training before. And one of the things that I see most often is that, these folks are really feeling the weight of imposter syndrome. They're really trying to prove themselves. It might be the first or maybe the second time that they've ever led people. And they're acting on instinct, not any real training most of the time.
Beth, I mean, we tell our partners often that most new managers don't even receive training for 10 to 12 years before they've been a new manager. And of course, they've been elevated because they're amazing at their job. And that was me at that age. I was 25 and leading a team of 7 or 8 individuals and just trying to do what I thought I knew how to do. And that was a lot of guesswork and learning from others. But again, knowing how it made me feel, I wish I would have seen those corrections before I practice the wrong thing on somebody else.
And so now in your career at Titus Talent and in your role as, a strategist, talent strategist, do you ever give counsel to companies that have this type of situation where they have young managers? Like, do you feel passionate about this particular area just because you've had this
I
experience?
do. I just feel so passionate about giving people training and opportunities to observe. I think that's something we often miss. We always say, oh, just send them to training, but it's more than that. We need our people to be exposed to the moments that are vulnerable for us, moments where we have to have a tough conversation and they're just sitting in the room observing so that they can learn from us in doing things better than we have done them before. So oftentimes I just encourage people to find, we use internal training. We have quite a bit of coursework on developing mid-level managers, but then we've also used places like Franklin Covey, leading self, leading others, leading leaders, leading strategy. And we know that people don't have to go it alone. So yeah, I'm very passionate about saying, get people some support, get them some training.
Yeah, and they're so grateful too. I mean, anytime we've done a boss workshop and it's the first time that somebody's been exposed to that type of thinking or teaching, learning, they're so happy to have something, because what most people do is what a lot of us have done, and especially entrepreneurs, these books behind me are because, you feel like you're failing left and right. And so I'll just go read a book and that'll tell me how to do it. But to your point, seeing real people have those conversations in front of them and seeing it done well and then being able to debrief afterwards is super important. And this is just because it's fresh in my mind. You just coming off the EOS conference, I did a breakout on quarterly conversations. And I
Yes.
had several people in the audience asking questions. Well, how do I say this? And how do I do that? And I think that role playing is often really underutilized, and it's so powerful and it sounds so dorky, and people just don't want to do it because it feels awkward and embarrassing. But don't you find that that's a super helpful tool as well?
Yes, and actually, our partners ask for a lot of support on communication. So sometimes it's change management communications, other times it's how to have that difficult conversation. And I always tell them, I'll give you a little template, I'll write you a short script, but ultimately, you need to call me so we can chat through it because I don't know your person like you do. You have the relationship. So, what are the things you're going to edit so that it feels like you and not like me? But it does give them a chance to practice it and get some of the nerves out and allow them the opportunity to say it, the wrong way first, rather than using their person as the practice dummy, which we don't want.
This is also there's a worksheet that I've developed to help people have quarterly conversations, just like a thinking tool. Like think of a Dan Sullivan thinking tool. It's there to walk them through the steps. And once they collect all the data, like the what's working, the not working, there's a section where I say, okay, now craft your questions and think about the feedback that you're going to provide before you go into the quarterly conversation. And people are like, well, I thought it was just a conversation. Like, what are you practicing? You're rehearsing? And it's like, yeah, kind of.
Yes.
Because the way that you ask the question, is it a leading question? Is it a questolution? Is it, you know, right? There are things, and like honestly, sometimes the best thing you can do before you have a tough conversation with someone is record yourself as a voice memo and then play it back. There's lots of techniques that you can use to get better at that human connection stuff.
Definitely. I mean, we're in quarterly conversations right now. And before, many of our managers, if they do have somebody that maybe is missing performance metrics, they do want to call and ask, how do I have the conversation? How do I say the hard thing? And then Beth, to your point on the Bad Boss workshop, or excuse me, it's the Great Boss workshop, not the Bad Boss workshop, but the Great Boss workshop. We've sent so many of our managers to it. I've gone through it myself, and there's tools that all of us can learn. Even, I'm 20 some years into my career, and there's still these little nuggets that we can all take by reading the book, taking the training, doing the observation, doing the practice. So those things are still important no matter how far you are into your career. Guys, Beth does not train a Bad Boss workshop, just so you know. It's a Great Boss workshop.
Well, I mean, I think it just depends on the person,
Sure,
like
sure,
they
sure.
can take that, take it any way you want. It's a
You got
decision,
it.
right? I am fascinated by Titus's offerings because it's not just recruiting. You guys do other stuff. And I don't think everybody knows that. And so if I could give you a 5-minute commercial here to talk about all the different things that you offer, I think that would be very helpful for our listeners because I think that they sometimes think that these resources don't exist, and they do.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Beth. So much of what we've done, I think, why people know us for recruiting, it's a major part of our business, and that is who we used to be. But we are a full talent strategy organization. And the easiest way to say it and to remember it is that we help with hiring, how to train, and also retain your individuals. So outside of recruiting services, we have a division that's called talent optimization. That division specializes in predictive index, team design. We also are a reseller of predictive index, so we can help people with behavioral and cognitive assessment tools that are not only for interviewing, but also for developing great teams, developing team cohesion. We also have culture cohorts, culture creator cohorts. That's relatively new for us. So we bring people together in like seats and we offer a safe space, no note takers, no recording, where we can just talk about the challenges that are fresh to us, the things that we're experiencing every day. And those are great peer led types of discussion forums so that you can have other people who've been through it before available to you. We also have Culture Creators Speak, which is taking people like you, Beth, who are authors, who are experts in their field, and highlighting them so that people can see that we are connected as well. And if Titus can't do something for you, we know somebody who can. Also, more recently, we started doing HR advisory work, which is just basically acting as a support person. Again, as I said in the beginning, small companies don't always have a strategic HR person, a person who's really focused on building the people pillar of the business, and we want to help people with that. So we want to be your partner. A lot of recruiting agencies can feel a bit more, pardon me, a lot of recruiting agencies can feel very transactional, and our goal is to be a partner through everything that your organization is going through. And you don't need recruiting, that we're here to support those that you've placed or that we've helped you place as well.
So, since you guys are taking a more holistic approach to people, what would you say the top 3 people issues are in an organization?
Accountability chart or org chart, depending on who we're speaking to, right people, right seats. That's probably the most pressing thing we come across. Number two, how to take an organization who has a strong foundation of culture and ensure that every person that comes in the business understands that they live and they breathe the values of that organization. They live and breathe it into everything that they do. And third is what we're talking about here today, people really struggling with how to elevate their mid-level managers to be important future leaders of the organization. Those are probably the top three things we see as challenges.
Sometimes what I see with my clients is the accountability chart is set in focus day, and we come back to it periodically at the beginning, but then it becomes stale and forgotten almost, like people aren't really using it. Do you see the same thing happening with your organizations?
I do, and I feel like the accountability chart and the organizational chart get this bad rap. There's something that's written and then put there like it's meant to be written in stone. And one thing I always say to our partners that accountability chart and org charts are meant to be fluid. They need to be addressed as business needs change because we need different types of expertise. So much like you, I see that as being a common issue where we think about people before function, and we need to be thinking about function before we address who's going to be sitting in that seat.
Yeah, and so often the accountability chart is built around existing people because they've been around for a long time or they're the owner of the business or what have you.
And
And
that's the number one challenge is so many people who have started their business with the same group of individuals and they have tenure. And so they've elevated through the organization, but there comes a point in time where sometimes those individuals can't be the new functional leader. We need to hire from outside of the company to bring in the expertise or somebody that has been there, done that with a different perspective. So that's a hard thing for business owners and founders who hire a lot of people close to them when they start to recognize that there might need to be an elevation and bringing in new perspective.
yeah, absolutely. And I recently had a conversation with one of my integrators of a very successful business, multi-million dollar company who has been very homegrown in their approach to people. And while that's admirable, because you're bringing people up and growing the culture that you want, you can also run into a lot of problems because if the expertise isn't in the room when the company reaches $20 million, $30 million, $40 million, and you're still relying on these folks that were with you from the beginning, they're never going to be able to bring that kind of expertise in that's needed for you to stay competitive. And that is a really hard transition, I think.
That's probably a number one phone call too when it comes to I don't know what I need because people have worked with the same individuals for so long. It can cloud a little bit of the what's next. So don't just want to look at accountability chart once a year. It's something that we address every quarter and every time we make a pivot in the business to ensure we have right people, right seats.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, culture integration. Can you say a little bit more about that one? What are the main things that you see with that?
Well, it's interesting because so many individuals, when they're looking at their business, say, I want culture fit. And what I try to help people understand is that every time you add somebody into the organization, your culture actually changes a little bit because you are bringing somebody in with new behaviors, new personality, new perspective. And so rather than looking at culture fit, will they be a culture add? And then part of that is when people go through the interview process, we sometimes skip the part that's all about what are your values or what can you bring that aligns with our values. If they do interview on it when the person starts, we still need to think about onboarding and integration. So there are, as you know, there are so many things in an organization's culture that are a bit unspoken that legacy people just know because they've been around the block. And I know that people think politics and organizations is a dirty word, but there are politics at play. And so some of those unspoken things people just need to verbalize to help the person assimilate to the organization, but to onboard in a way that's comfortable. And they don't need to take a year learning. Somebody just needs to give them all the tea, I guess we could say it that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, that's great. All right. And then in elevating your mid-level managers. So this is a big issue. I think for a lot of my clients too, is that, this is when I start hearing generational slams and things like that, that I don't really think are it can't be simplified to that degree.
I agree. I agree. I I feel like when we talk about mid-level managers, we some of it is just because when a person does a great job for us, we want to recognize that. And we have this old thinking about career as a ladder that people need to move rung by rung up in the organization. We oftentimes do a disservice to our people because we're so focused on promoting with title and additional responsibilities that we forget that skills need to be developed before we do that. So times we recommend number one, don't put a timeline on promotion so that somebody thinks in 3 months they're going to get it, that anything should be tied to competency and skill development. So when you've proven success in this area, when you've completed the trainings, when you've done your debriefs, that's when, and there's a business need, that's when the elevation happens. So think about it less about tenure and they've done a great job, but have they proven they can take that next step? So before the title, before the pay increase, test the theory, because it's really hard when you have an amazing performer you elevate and they're not prepared for it, and demoting a person doesn't work very well. So we don't want to lose that high performer because we didn't prepare them for the next step appropriately.
Right, and I think telling them about, "Hey, here's the job. This is what the promotion could be." I would argue that right people for the right seats will see that and then start behaving and acquiring those skills either on their own or asking how they do it, or they're very interested in it. And what I see the mistake so many of my clients make is, to your point, it's retroactive. It's like we give them the promotion first and then expect them to catch up. And it's not that easy. Um, and because if the fire isn't in the belly from the beginning, then it's not going to be after they get the promotion.
And Beth, we a lot of times companies don't interview people for the next stage either because we have the get it, want it capacity to do it. Sometimes we elevate people and offer them a job. They're like, I don't even know if I want that yet, but we think it's the natural next step in their career. So there's so much to doing an internal interview because you interview around the skills that you need. And if there's a gap, you can build a development plan for that person. A lot of our partners say, I know there's people internally that want to apply for this job. I know you're going to the market. And I say, well, let them interview because we're going to learn a lot in that interview. If they're not ready now, we can build you a plan against the gaps in the interview that will prepare them for the future. And we should be doing that internally always.
Right. The example would be somebody wanting a job as the manager or the director or the supervisor, whatever the next level up is. And I often wish, because this always happens after the fact when you realize that nobody actually told them that this job is going to be, now you're going to spend 65% of your time doing people stuff. You're
That's
not going to be
right.
pushing paper around. You're actually going to be coaching and leading, mentoring, onboarding, training, all of those things is going to be mainly your job. And I think when people think title, that they just get fixated on the title and the increase in salary, and they're not thinking about what that actually entails. And so, we do them a disservice by not bringing them through the interview process.
Yes, Beth. And I think the title creep is such an issue for so many young professionals. They think that title is the answer. But I think part of it is because so many people think elevating is about managing people. And we need to do a better job communicating the value a person brings as an individual contributor. There is so much value. If you don't have a passion for leading others, don't do it. There are other ways you can bring value to the business that doesn't include leading other individuals. Don't do it just because you think you're checking a box for the next step of your career.
Exactly. Yeah. Preach
Yeah.
on that one. Oh, well, this has been a good conversation. Is there anything I should have asked you that I
Oh,
didn't?
man. Well, I don't know. I think I'm like trying to think about what I'm doing differently today than I did 20 years ago in my career when I made this first mistake. But I think what's really important for all of our listeners to hear that we shouldn't pretend we've mastered it. I still make mistakes. I don't want to speak for you, Beth. I still make mistakes. And the difference is maybe my mistakes are a little less obvious now. Maybe they're a little quieter. Maybe they're more subtle. Maybe they're the kind that you catch yourself in midair and adjust right before you land. It's a softer touch and a better angle. And more often than not, I hope I'm placing the ball instead of swinging for it like I used to do when there was ego involved, and learned that leadership, the points that actually count are the little subtle things that help our people feel like they can trust us, and anything we can do to not lose trust in that process. And even looking back, had I just apologized, that probably would have gone quite a long ways. So I just think you never master it. I don't believe in mastering anything. I think there's always something else you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to see that you're a human just like them, and we need to remember that they're human just like us. Okay, so I have one last question, just so we can get to know you. If you were to get a tattoo, it doesn't have to be related to this story, but it could be,
Hmm.
that would let us know a little bit more about who you are, or maybe it is related to this story. What would your tattoo be, and where would it be located?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I would probably get a tattoo of my mother's handwriting. And maybe the tattoo would say something like strength, and not in strength in me. I just always think about when people say, "Oh, what famous person is your role model?" I don't have one. My mom is my role model. She raised four kids. My dad traveled a lot, and I think I would want to honor her in that way. I think she has a lot of strength. And I probably have the T look a little bit like a cross, just to have a subtle nod to my upbringing. I think that's what I would do. Where would I put it? Oh goodness. Probably on my forearm. Just a little
Mm,
guy. Just a little
yeah,
guy right about there.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I think it's great when people have their parents as their heroes. My dad is my hero in a lot of ways, and my mom too, but yeah, it's nice when I hear that when we do personal histories, with clients and they share, their biggest influence, and yeah, th not a dry eye in the house often.
No, I know, even as I'm saying it, I was getting a little bit
I know,
teary. So I
me
just
too. I'm
oh,
like
it's so hard. It's so
I'm
hard.
like,
Parenting is hard, guys, okay?
"Do you have kids?"
I have two adult stepchildren, and I say my kids because I was raising them from 11 and 15 on. So challenging. Parenting is challenging, but they're grown now. So
Yeah,
it's exciting. Did
yeah,
some things
well,
right.
yeah, the mine are grown too, but that doesn't necessarily mean the problems get smaller.
That's right. Big kids, big problems, as they say.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, it's been lovely getting to know you, Raina. Thanks so much. You were a great guest, and I loved learning about your story and how you grew through that, and learning a little bit more about what Titus does, because I think it's a great company. So
Thanks,
thanks
Beth.
again
And
for
if
being
people
here.
don't know what we do, they can just call us anytime. They can find me on LinkedIn, and we can just have a conversation about talent and just being a sounding board for people sometimes. That's free, just being a sounding board. So give us a call and connect, and hopefully we can find a way to help you with your people.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks to Raina for reminding us that stepping in to fix things publicly can quietly break something more important: trust. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you again next week.